Okay, but we could see the PowerPoints here, though, right?
I made one.
It's not working right.
It was blank. It wasn't pulling up at all. So I just made a very.
Okay, because I think I have mine too.
The abbreviated one.
Yep, I found it. I have mine as well. I printed mine out. Just in case we have technical difficulties. Alright. And then you have those slides on your computer?
Yeah, I have all the slides.
Okay.
I just don't know why it's not pulling up on there.
Yeah, no stress.
Where are you going?
I mean, there's another, if this thing doesn't work, there's another way too, to where like they all have the PowerPoint, so they can pull it up on their phones and follow along as the instructor is speaking to. If we somehow can't get this back up.
Okay, we may need to do it like that, though. Because like I said, I printed mine out this morning. And I can just teach off this if this doesn't come up.
You'll be a little stir crazy. I mean, it can't be worse than the time.
Yeah, at least I can walk outside.
See, Mathis made you.
Chicken?
Mathis made you.
You did?
Yeah.
What do you say now?
Caravan. It is what it is. It's just starts with the NEC.
Yeah.
Will they have access? Will the students have access to the slides?
Yeah, they all have access to it. So as I was telling him, if we can't pull it up on the screen, they all have the PowerPoints I sent to their emails, so they can pull it up and follow along as you teach.
Okay, yeah. Mine might be a little bit different. Mine's probably a lot more abbreviated than what you did, but it's an obnoxious chapter.
It is, because you never know what they're gonna pull out of there to ask you either. It's like pharmacy. They can ask you 7 different ways on how they're gonna ask you pharmacy
We have
questions.
small technical difficulties right now with the one eye. So what we may have to do is just have you guys follow along on your phones with the PowerPoints. We apologize about that. Just technology.
This is so much fun. Hence why I'm using my personal device. I don't trust government equipment.
Which PowerPoint you going over?
So the MANMED E17, 117, Chapter 15. Physical examinations, standard for enlistment, commission, and specialty. Excuse me.
Sorry, one more time?
MANMED E117, Chapter 15. what y'all have. Oh, we're making progress.
Can you repeat what was on the other name?
NAVMED P117, chapter 15.
8 to 9.
Yep.
They all highlighted in red with the PowerPoints.
Most of them, yes. So, just so y'all know too, I don't know if I told you, I am the creator of pretty much all the material on GoHMU. I'm the one that scrubs it every cycle and updates what PowerPoints need to be made. So if you see any wrong things or you want anything updated in the PowerPoints, let me know. So, you guys know what GoHMU is? Okay. Yeah. So it's a system, for those that don't, it's a website that we created back in 2018 to where we created a PowerPoint for every single topic, plus quizzes, and then we update it every single cycle. So I have the plethora of all PowerPoints for the last probably 10 to 12 cycles for y'all to utilize.
Can you, that website you're talking about, can you pull it up? Or how I can see if I can pull y'all's up? Because it won't open mine either.
I don't know if GoHMU works on government computers. Let me try though. Worst case scenario, I can. Oh wait, PowerPoint won't pull up at all. Right? Is that what you said?
Well, but if they haven't updated this computer, my PowerPoint might be too advanced. Oh, it's computer.
This thing is super slow. I can't even get the internet to open. Well, at least you're teaching this one and I teach one more solo. It takes 5 hours in a day to teach this stuff. Probably gonna ask for your credentials. Google Chrome. Why is it not working? Does everybody have the PowerPoint? If not, you guys can go in and attend the virtual session I have right now and still follow along at the same time. Because this computer is jank right now. I can't get it pulled up on that.
Would it be anywhere else?
They have it in a share drive here.
Okay.
I think they have it in some EAP folder here in the share drive. I don't know what it is. Which one is? I know it's visible for y'all. We have people in person that can't see it on the computer up in here. Barnes, what folder on the share drive is everything in? You have an EAP folder on the share drive, right?
It should be the EAP
Which share drive? I know you got like 17 ones here.
You don't see it up there?
No, you can. Is it M or N? Where is he?
He's in a meeting right now.
Oh, this is fun. You might have to restart the whole computer. You might have like a storage space issue to where it's not wanting to pull anything up.
Well, can I just teach it off of
You can definitely teach it off mine. So everybody has it pulled up.
Yeah,
You just go up there.
Yep. And then just scroll down. Everybody's watching on Teams, so just go down that way and I'll reach the slides. So oops, my bad.
All right, y'all. So to not delay, for those who can follow along with the online, awesome. For those who can't, I'll do my best. So I'm H1 Farmer. I am from the Pulmonary Respiratory Sleep Clinic. I am a respiratory therapist. Been in the Navy 17 and a half years. So we will be going over NAVMED P117, Chapter 15. This is screenings, physical examinations, and standards for enlistment, commissioning, and special duty. Who's actually looked at this chapter, like actually gone into the instruction and looked at it? So 2 people. You notice when you look through it, a good chunk of it is physical exams and what is disqualifying for them. So it'll be like eye exam. If you have glaucoma, it disqualifies you from this, and this. So there is a lot in this instruction. I kind of went through it and just pulled out the big things that I have seen. If you want to go back and read it, this instruction is like 120 pages. It's a big one. So I tried to narrow it down and pull out the important pieces. So, the purpose of medical examinations: physically capable of performing assigned and prospective duties without unnecessary risk of injury or harm to themselves or the service member. So we want to go through, we want to screen people and make sure that they are fit for the Navy, that they can do their job, they can do the job without hurting themselves, or if they fail, they don't hurt somebody else by accident as well. And then, next slide. So, who can do the exams? So, yep. So we have a licensed independent practitioner or a physician assistant may perform all physical examinations covered in this chapter unless otherwise indicated. So as you're reading through this chapter, it goes through everything. It goes through re-enlistment, separation, retirement. If you've been in the Navy less than 30 days, what do you do? And under each one it says, these are the providers that can do this exam. Who can bottom line it? All right, a licensed independent practitioner, yep, I already said that. A general medical officer may independently perform examinations if he or she has successfully completed an accredited internship. So can a regular GP do a flight physical? No. But if they go through the accreditation and become a flight surgeon, can they do it?
Yeah.
Yes. As long as they have the right accreditation, they can do it. All physical exams are done on the DD 2807 TAC 1, report of medical history. So that's what the service member fills out, the DD 2807 TAC 1. I have seen that on every exam that I've taken. So please make sure you don't forget that one. And then the DD 2808, the report of medical examination, is the part that's completed by the physician or whoever's completing the exam. All right, and then make sure if you check anything on those boxes, you go into your block 77 on the 2808, and then they have a write out. I was like, hey, I sprained my ankle back in 2018. The doc will go in and be like, this does not impact their thing, or it's like they had to have 8 screws put in, and they have a bionic ankle now, and they're probably not fit for service. Make sense?
Those blocks are on the test, so no certain blocks that are stand out that they talk about on the 2808, because that will be on your test. I think block 77 I've seen on there a couple times.
All right, so conducting and recording the examination. Well, before we move on to that, all completed physicals are valid for 2 years. Moving on. So, for a condition or diagnosis that is deemed to be within standards, the notion NCD for not considered disqualified should be made at the end of the description of the condition or diagnosis. If the condition is not deemed within standards, it will be CD for considered disqualifying. So when you look at this instruction, something random for pilots, right? They can't have irritable bowel syndrome, right? I didn't know that until today when I was reading through all these codes, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess you don't want them crapping in the plane. That makes sense. So that they would say irritable bowel syndrome, and it would say disqualified behind it, so they wouldn't be able to do it. For a condition or diagnosis that the examiner is uncertain about, they're like, ooh, I really don't know about this one, they can put PD for potentially disqualifying. Any question with that? It's pretty straightforward. It's either disqualifying, not disqualifying, or potentially disqualifying. All right, if a condition deemed disqualifying by the examiner is ultimately granted, so they get a waiver, it should be marked in block 76 and 77 of the DD 2808. And it needs to have the date and the authority of the person granting the waiver. Notation should also include duties or programs that they are totally disqualified for, and the examiner shall indicate the final determination regarding qualification by checking the appropriate box. Block 74. And again, we want to keep everything 2 years. So we keep these on file for 2 years. All right. So this chapter is broken down into 5 sections. So that was the first section, is just like kind of an introduction. Section 2 is common medical examinations. So recruit screening should be conducted within 14 days of the sailor reporting to NCRD for 2 boot camp. Woo! Wrong branch.
Usually remember that is usually you guys, it's called P days. Usually P days or processing days is a 2-week time frame in boot camp. So that's your 14 days.
We all remember that, standing in line, sleeping for dental, you know, all that good stuff. Reenlistments. So we kind of already touched on this. The 2807 TAC 1 is done by the service member. The DD 28 is done by the appropriate examiner. And an independent duty corpsman assigned to independent duty may conduct reenlistment physicals. So your IDC can do the reenlistment physicals.
She hit on a point I wanted you guys to hear earlier. She said physicals are good for 2 years, right? You're like, well, I got a PHA every year, right? 2 separate things. A full physical, right? If you're applying for officer programs or reenlistments or any of that, is what that 2807, 2808 is, right? Your PHA is just a health assessment to see where you're at each year by your IDC to see if you're still in good, healthy condition, or if you need to be evaluated and go get another physical, right? So know the difference between PHA and physical.
Yes, because these are like the physicals, like for if you want to go to school or anything like that.
Go overseas, go operational.
All of it, all of it. So we already kind of touched on this. It's good for 2 years. There are certain exemptions to this. Some special duty examinations you have to do yearly. I think if I can think of one, like flight, yeah.
And I think
Divers one.
They're on those slides towards the end.
Yeah, we'll go over them.
Explosive ordnance. And the other ones.
If you're applying for the Navy and the Marine Corps Reserves, and then if you're doing a commissioning program. In cases not covered above, when a complete physical examination is required and more than 90 days but less than 2 years has elapsed since the most recent exam was done, you just need to update the 2807 TAC 1, and it needs to be reviewed by an appropriate examiner. And then you annotate on it, it's an amendment to the medical record. So it's like, hey, I had this done, it's been more than 90 days, it's been less than 2 years, I need a new one, nothing's changed, they'll just do an amendment, and then you don't have to do the whole process over. Amendment. I can't talk. All right, we kind of touched on this. This slide is just going over again if there hasn't been much changes. When with that 90-day to that 2-year period, you can do the amendment. I'm just going to skip that word. Addendum. You said it. I'm going to read it, and I'm not going to be able to say it again. All right. A significant new medical history is obtained. Each item should be specifically reviewed and commented on in Block 30. So, Block 30. All right, so common medical examinations, we kind of already touched on this one. So how many days does the recruit have to get their screening done? 14. The results of the recruit screening evaluations, including any lab tests, shall be recorded on an SF600, and then we stick it in their medical record. For recruits with less than 180 days of active service who are discovered to have a disqualifying medical event that exists prior to enlistment that has not materially changed, they have 2 options. So they are either not recommended for retention or recommended for retention. So depending on what's going on, if the Navy feels like it's not going to impact their service, we can let them stay, or we'll disqualify them and they will go home.
That's where you see people get asthma. If you ever heard of asthma for like medical conditions, they have up to that 180-day mark. If they're still not going to be fully fit, then they have a way to separate them without any issues within that 180 day period.
All right, and then reenlistments. So again, service member and the examiner will complete the DD 2807. Your computer's chirping. Okay. A focused physical examination with lab results, and then the determination made by the examiner. If anything going on with this sailor, are they fit for full, they can go do what they want to do. Again, what block do we put all significant diagnoses in? 77. 77.
Sorry. Just do this real quick.
1 second. He's checking something.
The Teams call just ended, so I gotta start it back up.
I guess Teams died.
Cuts out after an hour every time.
This is a very long chapter, y'all. Try to focus on the important stuff.
Almost ready, sorry.
And actually, while we're you said we might need to restart the computer.
Yeah, that's why it has a low disk space. Too many users have logged into it, so it's overloaded with space. So you have to restart it to kind of take away the count off.
While we're doing that, all right, Naval Academy. For applications to the U.S. Naval Academy, the Department of Defense Medical Examination Review Board has exclusive responsibility for scheduling and reviewing all medical exams.
Sorry, I just want to make sure.
All enrollees at the U.S. Naval Academy who are applying for a commission will adhere to one of the following. They have to have a DoD MERB physical examination. They have to complete the 2807, service member and the doctor, a focused exam with the labs. Make sure they are physically qualified. The results of an HIV, a current pap smear for females age 21 or older, and any other test deemed appropriate, and a dental. So for this one, it's a little bit more. So HIV, pap smear for girls, dental, and any pertinent lab tests. And then everything should be recorded onto an SF600 and placed into the medical record. So a lot of these are going to start to get very, very repetitive. We're a little behind. Do y'all want me to hit each one or just kind of... Fine.
So like when I was studying over this chapter, like I noticed that too, a lot of it was repeating, like basically it all comes down to you need 2808, 2807, and labs, and that's pretty much it. And fit for full duty. That's like, so that's why I've noticed like the wave jumps were.
There's another big one that needs to be hit on too. I don't know if you're going to hit on it. It's the one who grants the final approval of determining if you're going to be staying in the service or not, which is going to be your BUMED qualifications and standards individual. That one's on the test at least a couple times.
So this hits the Merchant Marine Academy. Programs leading to a superseding commission. Separation from active duty. So this one has some important timelines on it. So separation and evaluations including members of the Navy Marine Corps on active duty for more than 31 consecutive days. So any sailor or Marine who has made 31 days will need a physical. And it shall be performed for all separating service members within 180 days of their last day. So if you're getting out, make sure within 180 days you go do your separation physical.
Anything retirement or separation related, if you haven't noticed, has 180 days attached to it. So usually if you see those words, just know that's usually going to be your answer, 9 times out of 10. And the 31 days, like I hit on earlier, what do you consider when you're on 31 days or more? You're active, right? So you're considered an active duty member. That's why that after 30 days, you're going to get your examination and everything.
Did you say 130 days or 180?
180 days.
6 months is always going to be your mark for separating or retiring.
So your evaluation, your separation evaluation at a minimum, again, that 2807. Interview of the service member with the 2807. A focused physical exam and laboratory test, determination by the examiner. This one's a little different. The completion of the form DD 2697. And then if you're over 35, you can get, it is voluntary. You can get a hepatitis C screening if you would like. See if you have the antibodies. All right. And then it says they shall be read and initial the following statement. So I'm going to read this to you guys. You have been evaluated because of your planned separation or retirement from active duty service. You have been found physically qualified to separate or retire, which means that no medical condition has been noted that disqualifies you from the performance of your duties or warrants disability evaluation system proceedings. To receive disability benefits from the Department of the Navy, you must be unfit to perform the duties of your office, grade, or rating because of a disease or injury incurred or exacerbated while in the receipt of base pay. Some conditions, while not considered disqualifying for separation or a retirement, may entitle you to benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. If you desire additional information regarding these benefits, contact the Department of Veterans Affairs at 1-800-827-1000 or via the website www.va.gov.
Usually remember that too, right? If anybody knows anybody that's separated, right? They have that 180-day mark, right? Because they want to go ahead and identify what's wrong with you and kind of already get some of those VA appointments scheduled before you transition out so that it's a smooth transition once you're out of service and you get those, that's what I'm looking for, disability percentages that you're trying to get for, right? And makes that transition. That's why you have that 6-month mark to get everything taken care of.
Alrighty. And then for folks who are getting out less than 30 days, an authorized examiner will interview each service member, focusing on new or changed medical conditions since they started. So they're going to be like, hey, you've only been here for 30 days. Anything going on that has changed, yes or no? And then they'll go from there with an SF600 entry that says, I've evaluated this service member and reviewed available medical entries and found that he or she is physically qualified for release from active duty. Again, retirement, what's that magic number? 180 days. You start your separation physical, your retirement physical, 180 days. Everything is the same. They even get the hepatitis screening as well. And so affiliation with the Navy, with the Marine Reserves, it's all the same stuff, y'all. It's very repetitive. The difference, though, they need their DD-214. All right, so retention in the reserves. This one's a little bit different. Determines that a reservist has developed or had a material change in a medical condition that will likely prevent the service member from safely or effectively fulfilling the responsibilities. The member should be classified temporarily not qualified. And then you need the following documents. All available medical information, including outpatient medical records, 3 years of your preventable health assessments, so your PHAs, all commanding officer statements regarding any limitations, and any 2807 or 2808 from the last 3 years. If you're in the reserves, you still get your PHA annually. And if anything on that PHA shows there's been changes or you have new concerns, you'll do a physical exam. Again, if a reservist is getting out or retiring, how many days? 180. It's going to be pounded into y'all's heads by the end of this. Civilian exams. If for our civilians who are coming to work for us, they need to do the NAVMED Comm Instruction 6320.3. 6320.3 for guidance for civilian examinations. For deserters being detained at a naval place of confinement, that's SACNAV Instruction 1640.9. So, NAVMED Comm Instruction 6320.3 for civilians, SACNAV Instruction 1640.9 for deserters.
What's the SACNAV again?
Oops, hold on. 1640.9. That's the SACNAV. That's for deserters. I actually had one of those.
I don't think it's on the PowerPoint, but I'm pretty sure it's been on the test too. And somebody, if you know the answer, there's a certain time period that you have to keep the records for deserters or UA individuals for medical records before that individual is found or before they're separated from service. So I know that's been on the test before for the periodicity that you're keeping those medical records. So make sure you're digging into that chapter when you get to study.
Y'all doing okay out there? Eric, all right. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. None of that. Reminded me of a bad joke. All right, disqualifying physical standards. Y'all, I will tell you, this whole instruction is mostly the disqualifying physical findings. Like, it literally goes through each body system to, like, the shape of your eyelids. I'm not even joking. So if you're curious, you can go look. I don't think anything like that would be on the exam. But you never know. But if you get, like, if somebody has a lazy eye or they qualified for this, at least you know what instruction they pulled it from.
If anything that has been on the test for you to focus on, I would talk about the flexion and induction or pronation or supination of degrees of her hands or wrists has been on the test before. And all you gotta do is just think of it when you're like in the test, like what makes sense of what would be disqualifying for my wrist to not turn a certain amount of degrees. That would be disqualifying on there, right? Because the only time I've ever seen that on the test is those categories.
And I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know if I've ever seen those type of questions on the exam. But it's been a minute since I took the exam.
Logic's out the window. I just took a chief exam and they had a chapter 6 human anatomy and physiology question on it for the chief exam, which I haven't even seen since I was HN.
So, just some basic disqualifying physical standards. Uncorrected deformities of the skull, face, mandible, or degree that will prevent the individual from properly wearing a protective mask or military headgear. Loss or absence of bony structure of the skull not successfully corrected by reconstructive materials. Deformity of the lid sufficient to interfere with the vision or impair protection of the eye. Current growths or tumors of the eyelids. Whew. All right, this keeps going. It's literally going to go through almost every body system. Chronic conjunctivitis. That's gross. That's just like.
Those are the only times it's on the test too.
Chronic pink eye.
Say chronic or acute. And you didn't know like which ones are qualifying or disqualifying.
I'm just thinking, who has chronic pink eye? Like, wash your pillowcase.
I got a lot of chronic things.
It's like, let me scratch my bum and then scratch my face. Ugh, yucky yuck. Corneal dystrophia, retinal defects, optic neuritis, optic atrophy, glaucoma, loss of normal pupillary reflex, night blindness. Oh my goodness, so much. Chronic odious media, history of inner or middle ear damage, cleft lip, chronic conditions of the larynx. I mean, yeah, like y'all get the idea. Like there's so many. Absence of one kidney, that's disqualifying. Y'all want some giggles? Absence of one or both testicles. History of a penis amputation. History of genital infections or ulcerations, including but not limited to herpes.
Now let's say too, because I had H1 Marcel say this. These are disqualifying for you to get in. So you can get in, and then 8 years down the road lose a left testicle and still stay in, right? Those are just disqualifying coming into service. Some of these conditions you can develop and stay in if it's not impeding you completing your mission. So just know that that's just initial disqualification of coming into the service.
I did have a patient. Denny, you had already left the team when this happened. But he had a small firearm that he was cleaning, and he shot his testicle off. He was cleaning it, but it definitely looked like one of those injuries, you know, where somebody had their gun in their pants and they went to pull it out and accidentally shot themselves. But he was cleaning it. He would be disqualified from future naval service.
Oh, I found it. All right.
Oh, so talking about some of those, the degree of motion for the joints. So shoulder, forward elevation to 90 degrees, abduction to 90 degrees, elbow flexion to 100 degrees, and extension to 15 degrees. Wrist total range of 60 degrees. Hands and fingers, 45 degrees, both flexion and supination. Inability to clench your fist, pick up a pen, grasp, or touch tips of at least 3 fingers with your thumb. So you have to be able to touch your fingers. If you can't do those, you're not qualified for service. I don't remember. I think the only thing I remember from MEPS is the duck walk.
Things I don't remember.
Because everybody felt hugely awkward.
I guess that's the only thing that stuck with me after all these years. If you're missing your thumb, you can't qualify. You need your thumb. Your hips, you need flexion to 90 degrees, extension to 10 degrees, abduction 45, and rotation 60. Knee, extension to 0 degrees, and then flexion to 110. And then your ankle, dorsiflexion to 10, plantar flexion to 30. And then inversion and invasion at 5 degrees. So being able to go. So 5 degrees. And then abnormalities for your arteries and blood vessels. Schizophrenia and paranoid disorder. All right, the aeromedical examinations. So this one, something that I picked out. You have 4 classes of aviation personnel. So class 1, those are your naval aviators. So these are your folks flying. Class 2, aviation personnel other than pilots, designated or student. So technical observers, flight surgeons, aerospace medical physician assistants. Class 3, members in aviation related to duty not requiring them to personally be with the aircraft, like your flight deck personnel. And then class 4 is unmanned aircraft systems. So class 1 is your pilots. Class 2 is everybody else in aviation. Class 3 is your flight deck people, your signalmen, anybody who's going to be on the flight deck. And then class 4 is anybody working with unmanned, like drones and stuff like that.
So pilots, close to pilots, non-pilots, robots. Sounds like the classes there.
So, again, we do these to make sure that they are adapted to engage in duties involving flight. We talked about the 4 flying classes. And then a complete physical includes a medical history on the DD 2807 TAC 1 and the DD Form 2808. Applicants must also submit an SF 507 and a continuation of DD Form 2807. Results of this examination must be entered on, and this one's in red, and I have seen this on the exam. So, NAVMED 6410/10 abbreviated aeromedical examination short form. I have seen that one on the test.
So NAVMED what?
6410/10 abbreviated aeromedical examination short form. I clicked on it on accident somehow. There we go. Who can ground a pilot?
My boss. Just about anybody.
Anybody can ground a pilot, but who can let a pilot go? Who can give them their up chip back?
The flight surgeon.
Flight surgeon, right? I've seen that on the exam as well. And we are almost done, y'all. Trying to get y'all back on track. So new aviation check-ins. All aviation personnel reporting to a new command must present to the aviation clinic for a fitness to fly exam. Documentation must include the results of the evaluation, entered on an SF600, and the in the member's electronic health record, with statement of qualification for assigned flight duties. Update the adult preventative and chronic care flow sheet, so the DD form 2766. Disposition entry on the NAVMED 6150/2 special duty medical abstract. A new medical recommendation for flying or special operational duty, which is DD form 2992. And a review of all duty not involving flying periods for patterns of frequent or excessively prolonged grounding, and periods in a single year to exceed 60 days. So if the pilot's not going to fly for 60 days, they want to know. All right. All right. So, again, I thought it was a lot closer to the edge there for a second. I scared myself. So, that authorized examiner for pilots must be performed by a medical officer who is authorized by the Chief, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, or by the proper authority of the Army or Air Force. And then post-grounding examination. So after the pilot's been grounded, to go back up, they must see a flight surgeon, an aviation medical examiner, or an aerospace medicine physician assistant, and they need to be issued a DD form 2992, authorizing flight prior to returning to aviation duty. So that DD form 2992, that's what lets the pilots go back up in the air. And who's worked with pilots before? Man, they be trying to scam you. They'll be like, oh no, I'm fine. And crash it.
Can I take this Ambien and still go up next week?
What was that 6410 form again? Just so they know the difference between the 2992 and the 6410. The abbreviated one.
So the 6410 is for what the exam results are entered on. So that's the abbreviated aeromedical examination short form.
Is the name for the 2992 the clearance? Isn't it like called the clearance form or something like that?
It's like, I think it's UPCHIT or clearance chit, something like that.
Yeah, I was just saying that's what's going to be on the test. They'll say something about clearance chit. I think that's the name of the form or something like that. Just know that for clearance, 2992. For actual evaluation, it's going to be on the abbreviation short form of your 6410.
Who is
The
that?
other forms, you should know what it is. Special duty medical abstract, right? That's your 6150/2. And you have your 600, which is your record of medical care. And then your 2766 is one all y'all should know. It's basically a snapshot of all your preventive medicine and OC health stuff on one form. The adult preventive care flow sheet.
Yeah, for those who used to go do like medical, who's been on a ship and had to go through a chart and like verify the chart, you're supposed to go into that and like update it annually. Now that paper charts are kind of going away, it's not so much of a thing anymore, but they're bringing them back.
Well, they only bring them back to the deployment health records, but Red Lakes boot camp stop making records for 2021.
Correct. And it's a pain in the ass for those on the waterfront.
We're almost done, y'all. Diving duty. Divers. Divers must be free of distracting musculoskeletal conditions, anything ENT related, pulmonary disease, confounding neurological symptoms, or behavioral instability. Because I guess you don't want somebody to snap when they're 80 feet underwater.
I think they allow that in the military.
Within 2 years of application for initial training, periodicity between examinations will not exceed 5 years up to the age of 50. After the age of 50, it will not exceed 2 years, and then after 60, it will be annually. I don't know who we have in the Navy that's diving after 60, but
Guaranteed
God bless
you will
him.
have one of these types of questions on your test. They love to throw on an age and what the periodicity of the exams are. It's either going to be a diver question, motor vehicle operator, or an EOD question.
I've also seen it with the pap smears for the ladies. All applicants for initial and advanced dive training must have a valid NAVPERS 1200/6, which is the U.S. Military Diving Medical Screening Questionnaire. So NAVPERS 1200/6, U.S. Military Diving Medical Screening Questionnaire. Completed and signed by an authorized military officer or doctor not more than 1 month prior to the actual dive training. So they have to have this done at least 1 month prior. Alrighty, some other things that this person will need. They'll need a chest x-ray, PA and lateral, an electrocardiogram, an audiogram, type 2 dental exam, TB within 6 months, vision intraocular pressure for anybody who is greater than 40 years old, and color vision, a CBC, urinalysis, fasting blood glucose, a hepatitis C. They need their blood type, G6PD, and sickle cell. And then they must be either they need to have their vaccination for Hep A and B, or they need to prove that they have the titer. Immunized. There we go. All right, some other duties. So special operation medical requirements for minor diving duty. I can't get that word out. Submarine duty medical requirements. This is the NAVMED 6420/2. The health and reproductive risk counseling, mostly because of the exposure to all the radiation. And that's for female submariners and candidates. For your female submariners, they also have to have a current pap smear and breast exam.
You keep saying 6400, I want you to know where SSICs play a role. Your 6400 series is always going to be your physical exams, right? So any form that has 64 in front of it is going to fall in line with one of those. So that way when you're on the test and you see a 67 or 61, if you know that in the question it's talking about some sort of physical standards or physical exams, you know that they're going to talk about some sort of 6400 form. Does that make sense?
Alrighty, so, and then just some other random ones that they had in there. So your motor vehicle operators requirements are listed on the 49 CFR. 49 CFR.
I think that's the only CFR thing I've ever seen on the test. So.
Yep. So these special duty certification examinations are required for active duty and civilian personnel assigned as explosive motor vehicle operators and explosive handlers. The explosive motor vehicle operator examination for civilians and military is 2 years. And then the explosive handler is every 5 years. So for the vehicle operator, 2 years. For the explosive handler, just a handler himself, is 5 years. All right, and then section 5 goes over some of the screenings pertinent to like active duty women. So, funny story. Who's been in like longer than like 15 years? Anybody? Well, it doesn't even count if you're a man. So when I first joined, we used to have to do pap smears every year. And it was very, very annoying because it was a hard requirement to fill because it wasn't just active duty women. They wanted it for dependents as well. But when they went out and they changed all the standards, thankfully the Navy updated their requirements. So I think it was in like 2009, 2010 when the rules changed because I had just left the ship when that stuff happened. So for cervical screenings, for cervical cancer screening should begin at the age of 21. Women younger than 21 should not be screened regardless of their age or if sexual initiation or the presence of other behavior-related risk factors. So even if you have somebody who's under 21 who's having, things that we would consider risk factor, unprotected sex, multiple partners, yada yada, they do not need a screening if they're less than 21. Women ages 21 to 29 should be performed every 3 years. HPV testing should not be used for screening in this age group. Women ages 30 and older should be screened every 5 years by cytology and HPV co-testing preferred, or every 3 years by cytology alone if HPV testing is not positive. So as long as they're not showing signs of cervical cancer or they're HPV negative, every 5 years if you're older than 30. So, yay, every 5 years for me. It's a very invasive exam. Any questions? That's the whole chapter. I know, it's just probably the driest chapter. That's what I get for being like, oh, just put me down on anything. I don't care. Y'all good? Any questions? That was a slog, y'all. Good job.
All right, so we are really behind, but we have RP1 coming up here. SecNav 5210, the Records Management Manual, Part 3, is what RP1's getting ready to go over with y'all. So if you want to start pulling that up, maybe the computer will work for you. We restarted it, so we might actually pull up the PowerPoints.